So we have gotten so many questions about how Curated started and how my career started. The thing that always is sort of funny to me is that so many people think that we just like magically came out of nowhere. And I think the reality of life and entrepreneurship is that it takes time and it takes a lot of hard work. It takes a massive amount of obstacles, struggles to eventually get to whatever place of success, however you deem it as success. And this story is so interesting because it is the start of my career. What's funny is in today's world, it's sort of shocking to see, and this is not a political piece, but it's sort of shocking to see that Donald Trump is our president. In an odd way, that's sort of, it's because of him that my career sort of started. We're gonna sort of take a flashback to December of 2005. That year was a really pivotal point in my life. My parents were going through a terrible divorce. I was a young guy that, because of what happened with my parents, I wanted nothing to do with my father's business. I wanted nothing to do with my mother. All these different things that you're struggling with as a young guy trying to make it in the world. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do, but at the time I was so against doing anything in the car world because essentially I wanted to be in the marketing world or something different. I wanted to, reinvent the wheel and do something grand and do something big. So at the time, the real estate market was exploding, and especially in Palm Beach. I mean, you'd hear all these, multi-million-dollar homes selling, and I'd see young guys I knew that were selling real estate, or they were in the mortgage business, which we won't get into, but all these different things where these young guys were making money. And I decided that I wanted to try to market or get into the marketing side of real estate. I'm a young guy. I'm probably at this point maybe 18, 19 years old. And I didn't even have a suit that fit me well. So I was in this cheap, like probably $100 suit. So get that image. I weighed 60 pounds lighter, 50 pounds lighter. I had no facial hair. And really did not understand how business worked yet, but I was creative and I was definitely motivated. I think I had probably about $500 or $600 in my bank account. Really, I didn't have a car. I mean, I was literally like a struggling artist or, a struggling college student. I mean, that's what I was. I was promoting nightclubs. So I had this sort of knack for understanding people with money, and this was in a period where you started to see table service and bottle service. So the parties I promoted at nightclubs were doing pretty well. I mean, it wasn't like I was promoting nightclubs in Miami or New York. It was West Palm Beach and Palm Beach, but I was doing okay. I mean, I'd make a couple $100s a week, and that was exciting to me at that age. So I had the idea of literally walking in with my poorly tailored suit to one of the largest real estate companies in Palm Beach, and that was Barclays International Realty. Barclays was owned by a gentleman by the name of Robert Weiner, who passed away many years ago. Family had sort of a tragic story. We won't get into that. But I walked into his office and I tried to set up a meeting with him. And astonishingly, he actually took the meeting. And I walked into his office, and I'm a young guy and I'm chewing gum. And he looks at me, and the first thing he says, and I'll never forget this, is, "Kid, come here." And I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Come here." He puts his hand out and he says, "Spit your gum out." And I was very embarrassed. And at that moment, he didn't even say hello. He just said, "Spit your gum out." One thing, you never walk in a meeting with me with gum in your mouth. So imagine, I'm a young guy again. I'm super nervous. Now I'm like probably shaking. And I basically proposed to him that I have this concept of bringing younger, affluent people to his homes and producing like these small events, like cocktail parties or whatnot. And we start talking, and he's trying to dig into who do I know from the nightclub world, or what big spenders I know. And I realized at that point that I didn't really know too many people. The only people I knew were car collectors. Growing up around my dad's service facility, when he'd sell a car, I'd take a note of who it was. So I could, rattle off names like a collector like Ralph Mueller. And, he had 80 cars in a home in South Palm Beach that was at that point $10 or $11 million. His neighbor, a gentleman by the name of Mark Musa, had 30 cars and he had just sold his house for $13 million. So I could rattle off those names, and I did actually know those people, but again, I was using sort of names from my dad's business and saying that I knew these guys from the car world, which I did actually know these guys from the car world. I was on a forum chat called Ferrari Chat, and as a car nerd, I would be talking to all these collectors and socializing with collectors. So I did have these contacts, but again, it brought me back into the car world. So the second I started talking about these guys, his eyes lit up. And he's like, we have to do an event together. I would love for you to host a car event at a couple of our mansions. So imagine I have no money, I don't even have a nice suit, and this guy who's a mogul in Palm Beach real estate is asking me to produce events at his multi-million-dollar estates. So I'll never forget, I flew home. I don't even know what I was driving at the time, but it wasn't my car, I'm sure. And I literally started on PowerPoint and with a Word document and PDF creating I guess you could call it like a sponsorship deck, or I guess, something along those lines to pitch people about this event. So it was a beautiful estate that he had on the water. It was like $30 million estate. And I wrote up this thing, and I thought of a name, and I said, okay, we're gonna call it the Palm Beach Supercar Weekend. And it'll be a weekend of events. It'll be a private event. We'll invite supercar owners to this house. We'll have champagne, we'll have a little food, and we'll take photos, and it'll be a fun day, like a private car show. So I put this sponsorship deck together, and I have pictures of the house, I have pictures of supercars, and in the next couple days, I start shopping my deck. And I have to find it somewhere, but I think my goal was like $5,000 to raise for the sponsorship deck for this event. I was getting the house for free. I know I had to pay for insurance. I really honestly at the time, I didn't know the cost of security. I didn't understand the cost of champagne. The event was way over budget. That being said now, I don't think you can produce any event for $5,000. But I started going out. I literally walked into Bremen, Palm Beach. I showed them my deck. They actually knew who he was at Barclays. They called him right away. They said, we saw this deck. They became a sponsor. I think it was like $500 from them. And I started going out to all these different brands. Within about 2 weeks, I raised the $5,000 and I was so thrilled. I can't tell you that motivation of that first $5,000 was so important. So I start reaching out, I'm promoting this event. I did this very cool invitation, which I have to find, and I'm promoting it. Palm Beach Supercar Weekend, Ferrari Enzo, Carrera GT. And what was astonishing was that it was such a unique idea at the time that all of these guys that had Ferrari Enzos and had these cars were reaching out to me. So I was building this database, and I had a guy call me and he says, hey, I just bought a black Carrera GT, I'm bringing it to the event. I have a black SLR, I'm bringing it to the event. We had a guy out of Miami that had just took delivery of a CLK DTM who said he was bringing it to the event. So, imagine now, I'm amped. I feel like, I'm about to drop an album or get a record deal. That was the excitement that I had going on. And it started to create a buzz, and I had more guys. So I think I had about 40 or 45 guys signed up, which was pretty big if you consider that in 2005, there weren't that many car events, and to get that many supercars together was actually a pretty big feat. So I had a follow-up meeting. I think we were about a month out from the event, and Robert calls me and he says, hey, I need you to come into my office. So I go in his office, and who's on the phone but Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump was a big figure in Palm Beach. He was known for his Mar-a-Lago estate, and he was, a larger-than-life guy. I don't think he had the TV show at that point, but everyone knew who he was. So I was sort of starstruck that I'm in this meeting now, again, probably in a very bad suit, square shoulders, didn't fit me well. And he's on the phone with Donald Trump, and he's proposing that we take all of the supercar owners and rally to Trump's new house. Now, Trump at the time had just purchased the Abe Gossman estate, which I don't know the exacts, but he was a former insurance mogul, and Trump had purchased the house. I want to say it was like $60 or $70 million, and he was redoing the house and putting it on the market for 120 or 130 million. And at the time, this would be the most expensive real estate listing in the world. So Robert proposed to Donald Trump that we would actually bring the event to the house, and this is how we would launch the house to the world. Supercars and the world's most expensive real estate listing. Now, I mean, this for me, going from promoting nightclubs to this within a couple months was completely surreal. Now, I probably had $700 in my bank account now. I started to buy champagne. Luckily, I had a friend that knew someone at one of the liquor distributors. They got me a deal. So I was literally hustling everything I could. And the event came closer and closer to the date. And the morning of the event, I'll never forget, we organized everybody at the first house, and these cars are just coming in. Yellow Enzo, and at the time, it was like one of the first Murcielago Roadsters. It was an orange car, I'll never forget it, pulled in. And all these supercars are showing up, and I am just freaking out. I'll dig up photos and we'll include them in the video, but the photos, if you really think about events, I mean, they're just still to this day, they're astonishing. You have a CLK DTM and an Enzo and a Carrera GT and all these really special cars together. So it was definitely one of those moments that was completely surreal for me. So we stayed at the house. We had we had some champagne toast. People took photos. We had actually massage tables if somebody wanted to get a massage. We had, I think, cigar rollers, all the cheesy things that you'd find at some cocktail party. And it was about 3 p.m. and we all decided that everyone was gonna rally together north through Palm Beach along probably one of the most beautiful highways in the world along the water to the new Trump estate. So this is the first time anyone had seen the house publicly. The house was just being finished, and who was going to welcome us but Donald Trump himself? So we're all driving up, and I'll never forget, we're pulling into this stunning driveway, and this massive palatial estate is on the ocean, and all of the collectors are just their jaws dropped. They're freaking out. The photos from that house are just insane. I mean, it's, the best supercars in the world and the most expensive house in the world at the time. So Donald Trump gives everyone a private tour. He took photos with me. He wasn't the most warm guy. I mean, he was still very, uptight, but he welcomed everyone. He showed everyone the house. There was a builder at the time that was actually making fun of some of the fixtures and saying, wow, how are you going to use cheap fixtures like that in this house? But regardless, it was just an incredible day. What I didn't realize, and it didn't even occur to me at the time, but there was a ton of press there. So you had Palm Beach Post, Palm Beach Daily News, you had Palm Beach Illustrated, you had all these newspapers and magazine reporters there, and they were taking photos, and I'm obviously taking photos with Donald Trump, with the cars in the house. And the next day, literally plastered all over the Palm Beach Post, all over the local papers, is my photo with Donald Trump at this estate. And it's Palm Beach Supercar Weekend takes over the world's most expensive real estate listing. And if that's not a way to sell yourself, or if that's not a platform, I don't know what is. I took those articles, I took those photos, and that's essentially how I started my career. I used that as the platform to eventually launch the big Palm Beach Supercar Weekend, which at one point was probably one of the largest supercar events in South Florida, if not the East Coast. We had 200, 300 supercars, 20,000 people, but it was really using that branding and using that spotlight as a way to build myself. And it's funny because I never really bring it up because there is so many stigmas and political, arguments about Donald Trump as the president. But it's a moment I'll never forget, and it's definitely something that, when people ask me how you got started, hey, I got started with nothing, but I did have something really special that happened to me day one.
Damn, I did not know that, bro.
Yeah.
That's fucking awesome.
It's cool, right? It's good, right?
I can only imagine imagine your face that you're there. You're like, what
Dude.
have I done? This is amazing.
Dude, it was sick. It was sick. And I milked it. For fucking,
Yeah, yeah,
dude, I fucking milked that shit. I was like, yeah, we have celebrities. And oh, Donald Trump, he's a friend. He's like, oh, yeah, I know Donald. Like, you know, it's not, yeah, I know. We work with Donald Trump, you know. It's like,
Dude, that's